Well, I've showed up, haven't I? Welcome to This Much Is True. Day 23 of a kind of 91-day project. And, okay, there was the weekend, but I said I was going to be away, which I was, for my daughter's 21st. And I didn't make it last night. And that was purely a logistics thing. There was too much on. I had night classes. And I was on my way home from those at around 9:30 at night on foot. And Steve, who you met earlier, he rings and says, "Hey, how about I intercept you and we go to the pub?" And even though I am kind of dry January, I had a little Guinness and a bit and a chat. Got back here. I had some work to do. I thought, will I do the video thing? Just didn't have time. Anyway. How about contacting me? This much is true at protonmail.com. It's getting boring now, but you will get the ding-a-ling if I hear from you via that method. If you want, of course, down below, comments on YouTube. But then again, you might be saying, why am I even wasting my time listening to you, Irishman? Because you're not organised. You haven't really got much to say. I don't, because... how do I put it? I've been busy even. It's a good time to kind of resume January for me. And although I'm not 100% discipline-wise happy with that state of things, you know, the procrastination is there or the sloppiness is there. And I don't like sloppy. I'm looking around because one of the things I did was, you know, I got myself a checklist. And I was going to use that religiously. Didn't bother. Just did the checklist. That was another way of putting off doing stuff, doing the actual checklist, I find anyway. But in terms of getting out and mixing, I've had lots going on, which is great for me because I rarely get out. It's been driving me mad. This thing, this voiceover narration shtick, it's very isolating. And it can get to you after a while. You think you're going mad. But this month alone, I've been to Jack Black of Mind Store, not the Hollywood guy, Mind Store. Check it out. I've met Jack. I actually bought Jack a pint. Jack goes back he's a Scottish guy, and it's all positivity and getting your act together and stuff. Just listening to him does me good because he's got this lovely Scottish burr thing going on. So check him out, Jack Black Mind Store. So I've been to him. Then I went out with my eldest daughter, Regina, a week or two ago, and we went to see a David Bowie photograph exhibition in Rathfarnham Castle, which is great. It's a historic place, and I just enjoyed having that time with her, you know, because they're at the age now where, you know, I'm in the way kind of thing. So it's just nice to have that little bit of time, see how she's getting on, where her life's going, and just spend time with her and go, wow, look at it. She's a beautiful young woman, and I remember when she was that small, which wasn't that long ago. I think just like mothers and sons and fathers and daughters, they have a bond, you know. And she's so easygoing as well. She's a lovely, very easygoing person, and she's arty, and she's showing signs. Well, she knows her music. I might have mentioned this to you before. She knows her music. She knows her 80s music and 70s music even. And I'm going, could she be the broadcaster that I never made it to be? Because I've always been on the tangents of broadcasting, but never anything like secure and permanent. There's a guy retiring from RTE tonight, Brian Dobson. And I knew of him when he was a pirate, roughly my age. Now, he must be a few years older, but not much. And he's like, had 37 years in the media business, where yours truly pops up like a bad penny every so often, every few years. But social media and stuff is helping with that as well, and keeping on front of camera and stuff is good, I think, just as a discipline. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. And there was a business meeting a few weeks back as well. Steve, as you've met Steve and I have been out for a drink here and there, which is good. I've been out walking with my wife. I was at a Thin Lizzy tribute concert. Yeah, for me, that's like a lot in a month of kind of interacting. And I know there's one or two I'm leaving out as well. Of course, night classes as well, which started last night. So, yeah, in terms of a resume, it hasn't been bad. You know, it could be better. I need to tighten up and stuff. And I've work on. It's so important to have work on, because otherwise you're really worried. I mean, when you've work on, you have money coming in. So, yeah. So I wanted to talk about discipline tonight. I don't know how you do it. Certainly, I think for all the gadgetry in the world. Now, my wife would definitely be, she'd be a Microsoft Teams person, and she has her Google Calendar and all that. I can only stick with those kind of, even though I sold technology, I sold it for years. I remember when there was Lotus Notes. Does anyone remember that? It was like this little online diary thing you could get and load it onto your hard disk. I sold that stuff. And yet I go back. Sorry, I keep looking around. And the reason I look around is I generally have in my vicinity things like diaries and books that I refer to. Yeah, I have my diary there. I still go back to the diary. And there is a nice thing of to-do lists. But the problem is, there's this thing. You know, that is, well, it's waste. That one isn't particularly active, but there is another one around. Do you have a system? Please share. Let me know what it is. I still think you can't beat pen and paper. I think for retrieval, I might argue with myself on that, because I had, no one's going to remember this among a lot of you younger people. I had a Nokia 9100 communicator. This was the dog's bollocks of a phone that would open up, and it had a little keyboard in it. And all as I did is I used to, well, besides using it as a phone, I used to use it to put all my contacts in. So I had everyone's number. You know, of course you can do that on your phone as well, but I'm talking, this was way back. And one day, you know, as sales guys, you can do what you want when you want. And I was in between calls, and I drove up to the airport, and I was fascinated then by mobile data. In fact, I have a company registered. I had my own little company. And it was great. It was like I was working, but I had a little sideline, a hustle. I used to sell Palm Pilots and compact iPacks. Does anyone remember those? Cyan organizers. So I used to have a shelf of this stuff. And I'd say to my wife, how are we going to get rid of this? And I always sold them. I'd sell them on the back of whatever else I was selling at the time. But I had this communicator. It was on the roof of my car, and I was there in my shades on a glorious sunny day at the perimeter fence of Dublin Airport. And I was watching the planes going across, and I was thinking, wow, I'm able to access my email on this thing, which was like really novel. And in fairness, there wasn't that many people with that kind of kit at the time, but I had connections. And I even had like a wireless modem in my laptop called a GC25 Ericsson. Getting very geeky now. But, you know, I was working with kit ahead of my time. Everyone takes it for granted now. But certainly in the year 2000, I was cutting edge with a kit I had. Anyway, fucking get to the point, Mark. And I drive off, and everything's good in the world. And then I go, where's my communicator? And I realised I'd left it on the roof of the car as I drove away. And I went back, and eventually I found it crushed to shit from trucks had been hitting it and everything. And I was there like Frankenstein cradling a dead child, which sounds like a really bizarre image. But check out, like, maybe, you know, remember the way Frankenstein used to hold the maiden or whatever? Oh, my poor little baby. So I don't know how you discipline yourself, but I still think pen and paper, bulletin points, a shit list, as late Joe Nolan, my mentor in sales, used to say, get the shit list, Mark. I haven't done a hand's turn all day. Get the shit list out. And you know, you can make the shit list fun because you can include personal things in it. You can go get your suit cleaned, you know, get a haircut. And it's all progress. Progress has an aliveness about it, no? I want to talk a little bit about belonging and a story I knew, which is quite sad about that. In our world, and we tend to be tribal, We like to belong. We don't like to rock the boat if we can help it, although it appears to me the only people that do get things done are those that rock the boat, break the mould, are outliers, all that kind of thing. No, most of us want to go along to get along and to feel belonging. In fact, if you do check out my poetry, just go Mark Manning, a cherished belonging or something it's called. It's a poem. Yeah, you mightn't be into it. What is it called? Anyway, it's cherished belonging. It's about San Francisco and stop. So this story anyway involves the regiment, also known as the SAS, Special Air Service. People are always fascinated by them. They were the guys in black that gave a certain glamour, if you can call it that. As I get older, I'm not interested in guys in tanks and machine guns and all that stuff that had me army-barmy as a kid. I love the discipline within ranks, the camaraderie. I understand that, and I think discipline is so important in that kind of a thing. But look, I saw a guy, I don't know if you saw it. I mean, the way technology is going, I saw this poor guy. He was either a Russian or a Ukrainian, and his tank had been wiped out, and I think the crew with it, but he was there on his own. And this fucking little drone came up. I don't know if you've seen this. It's horrific. And like, this is where technology is going. The drone followed him. It followed him. And he was trying to escape from it, running around the tank, clambering over the tank. This little bzzz, like a little fist-sized wasp. And it blew up and blew him apart beside him. I mean, can you imagine when the technology goes into micro technology and all this? It just fucking does my head in. In fact, talking about SAS, there's a great book by a former member called Ghost Squadron. Again, I look here because I know it's somewhere in my library, so sorry for looking out of camera. Ghost Squadron. And Ghost Squadron was written about 20 years ago, I think. And it covers all the kind of initial campaigns from the Long Range Desert Group, which were the forerunners of the SAS in North Africa, circa 1942, up into Croatia and thereabouts 1943, the Balkans, and probably into D-Day as well. And then onwards through Indonesia and Malaysia and whatever, all these different campaigns. Borneo comes to mind, Yemen, Qatar, all that stuff that they were involved in, basically trying to keep the British Empire, trying to keep the sun from not setting on it. But the conclusion of his book, I think his name was Ken, come to me. The conclusion of his book was we should disband the SAS. Why was that? Because he reckoned technology was now just going to be the total game changer. You know, he said, you know, with a few flicks of a button, I suppose he was talking about, and very good visionary as well, like cyber crime and some kind of a cyber attack. You know, you can wipe out a food supply, water supply, electricity, you know, without bombing anybody or without going and shooting anybody. There's ways you can disable communities, humanity. Another book. This is the end of my for tonight. And it's sad because it concerns belonging. So back in 1980, April, I think, you might remember the SAS first came to the fore in the public, to the public's attention with the military precision special services assault on the Prince's Gate, the embassy there in London. And they, what's the word? Wiped out, or I know there's another military word for it. Anyway, they basically killed all the terrorists. And I'm not sure, there might have been one casualty or so, but everyone got out alive, and they were kind of heroes. Neutralized the terrorists. So one of them is this good-looking guy, red-haired chap, and he wrote a book, and the book was called Baptism of Fire. And he loved the regiment and all the guys that were in it. And he was on that storming of that embassy. He was one of the guys that went in the black stuff, the black kit. He's a handsome kid, you know. I saw a few photos of him, and he's, as I said, a kind of red-haired guy, skinny guy. And he also did a tour or two of Northern Ireland. And he lost, with some kind of firefight with the IRA, and he lost his best friend, or his very close friend. And that affected him. But he was living the kind of James Bond life, you know, internationally, you know, learning all these amazing techniques, and, you know, what used to say years ago, army life's a man's life. And he was training with some troops in, I think it was North Carolina. He was training with the US forces. And he came across a section, and they were Christians. There was a devout Christian element within this particular army segment he was training with. And he was very impressed by these guys. And they never, like the best of Christians, I find, the ones that really shine are the ones that don't espouse it, but live it by example. And he began to seek meaning, and he was getting meaning from these guys that were as tough as nails, and yet were devout Christians and honourable. There was a nobility about them. And he thought to himself, well, he went to seek the Lord, and by all accounts found the Lord. Very much so. And there's pictures of him helping out in Malaysia. And I always remember the subtitle of the photos. He's with some family or something. They were probably trying to win hearts and minds, which you might remember was a tactic back then. They'd integrate with the locals, and by example, they would win around the locals to cooperate with them. But anyway, the subtitle was Separating the Wheat from the Chaff. And that's what he's doing, with a little kid laughing beside him. But he began to follow his beliefs to the obvious conclusion was that he would become a clergyman. And he was newly married, and the guys in the regiment couldn't quite understand it. One of the things that did affect him was after his friend was killed in Northern Ireland, he had to gather up his friend's belongings from the locker to pass on to his friend's parents. And he found a Bible, and the Bible was, you know, had passages underlined in it. So he wasn't ever aware that his best friend was very, Christian. And that affected him emotionally as well. He said, I never even knew this guy. And anyway, to cut a long story longer, he became a chaplain. Probably down in, where did the SAS train again? Oh, Mark, that's annoying me now. It's not Norwich, but it's somewhere like it has that kind of sound about it. He became a chaplain. And he just felt a distance between him and his former comrades. Something had come down. I don't think the regiment were too supportive of it. Or wasn't their thing. But, they accepted it. But he began, I think, to miss his former occupation, or he felt ostracized to some degree. I think he wrote the book as well, this book called Baptism of Fire. And I don't think that went down too well with the army. And the gas thing is, every second person is now claiming to be in the SAS and writing books about it. Some of them are very, very good. Obviously, you think of Bravo 2-0 and what have you. But anyway, so it must have been playing on his mind to such a degree that he took his own life. He climbed into a car and gassed himself, I think. And funny enough, it wasn't a Bible that was found beside him. I think it was a copy of War and Peace. Maybe he was trying to say something. What are you talking about, Mark? I'm telling you, what I'm talking about is that sense, that desire, that craving to belong did for him. Whether it was belonging to Christ or belonging to the regiment or belonging within a friendship, camaraderie, he just wasn't happy anymore. And that's sad. But I will leave you with these wise words from the late George Michael, who I loved and cried like a baby when he died. George Michael achieved so much in his life, unlike me. And George Michael was like 1 day older than me. 25th of June, 1963. But he has one line in a song called Heal the Pain. And I love this line. I think we should all live by it. Be good to yourself, because nobody else has the power to make you happy. Think about it.